April 8, 1943, 20,000 feet over Tunisia. The sun burned white above the clouds. Below, desert winds howled like forgotten ghosts. Inside the cockpit of his P-40 Warhawk, Lieutenant James Jimmy Hathaway gritted his teeth. His fingers trembled slightly on the stick, sweat mixing with engine oil on his gloves. Then he saw them, 3 Heinkel Ho-100Ls, sliding across the horizon like metal vultures. Nose guns, belly turrets, top-mounted gunners, each one bristling with hate. Flying low, tight V formation, unaware. He should radio it in, fall back, wait for orders. But his breath shortened. His vision tunneled. No time. He banked right, hard. The wind screamed. His wing dipped below the cloud line. He was behind them now. But too fast, too exposed. A normal attack would get him shredded. Then he did it. The maneuver he was ordered never to use. He pulled the stick left, kicked the rudder, rolled the entire aircraft sideways under the German formation. The world spun. Sky and sand blurred. He fired mid-roll. The first Heinkel exploded mid-air. The second burst into flame and dropped like a stone. The third wobbled, coughed black smoke, and spun down into the abyss. 3 seconds, 3 kills. The cockpit filled with smoke. His own. A warning light blinked red. He leveled out, coughing, gasping, alive. Silence. Behind him, the sky burned. They had called it suicidal. Command banned the roll, labeled it reckless, unmilitary. But now, 3 bombers were gone. Jimmy just stared into the sky, hands trembling. Not from fear, from what he had just done. Because no one, not even the Germans, would believe what came next. Kansas, 1938. Cornfields rustled like waves. Dust clung to every window pane. The smell of manure and molasses drifted on the wind. Jimmy Hathaway stood barefoot on the roof of his family's barn, eyes locked on a single speck in the sky. A crop duster. Yellow wings, dipping and rising. His little brother shouted from below, "Jimmy, you scared of heights again?" He didn't answer, because he wasn't scared of falling. He was scared of failing. Up there. 4 years later, flight school, Montgomery, Alabama. The P-40 screamed into its dive. Jimmy's hands locked. He couldn't pull out. "Abort, Hathaway! Pull up!" He froze. Instructors shook their heads. "Farm kid, book smart. No instinct." His flight mate whispered, "Stick to tractors, Kansas." He nearly quit. But at night, alone in the hangar, Jimmy sat inside grounded cockpits. Eyes closed, humming to himself, left hand on throttle, right on stick, listening, not for engines, not for orders, for patterns. On weekends, he sketched dogfight maneuvers in a school notebook, arrows, loops, spins. One shape kept repeating, a sideways figure 8, a spiral that broke formation. He flew different. Not disobedient, just intuitive. Instructors hated it. But once, during a surprise drill, he dodged 2 bogeys using a move no one recognized. A roll, inside the turn. His wingman called it the outlaw twist. Command didn't laugh. They wrote it down and banned it. He never told his family back home. Just sent letters saying, "Flying's going fine." But Jimmy knew. The skies weren't made for rules. They were made for risk. Luftwaffe briefing room. Palermo Airfield, Sicily. March 1943. The room smelled of cigarettes and kerosene. Walls painted gray. Voices, sharp, clipped. German precision in uniform. Oberleutnant Dieter Kruger stood at attention, pointer tapping against the chalkboard. Formation V3, no deviation. Altitude 6,200. If attacked, we initiate Protocol 9. Flak shell burst, break right, stay in pattern. Discipline, over impulse. Behind him, 3 bomber crews nodded. Questions? A young gunner raised a hand. What if the American fighters dive vertical? Unexpected angle. Kruger didn't blink. You follow the protocol. Deviations cost lives. Instinct is not doctrine. In the hangar, mechanics checked bomb loads. Black crosses glinted on silver wings. Inside one Heinkel cockpit, radio operator Eric Weiss adjusted his dials, muttering, "They fight like jazz musicians." His pilot grunted. Sloppy. Unprofessional. Weiss half smiled. Unpredictable. That night at mess, the topic came up again. Rumors of an American who rolled inside a German formation. Suicidal, said one officer. Impossible, said another. Kruger finished his schnapps. If they start flying like that, undisciplined, chaotic, they'll break each other before we do. He meant it as comfort. But the silence around the table said otherwise. The German air doctrine, the grid, was admired even by the Allies. Formations, angles, command hierarchy, every move planned. But somewhere over Africa, a new kind of enemy was forming. One who didn't respect the grid, didn't even see it. Because sometimes chaos is the point. And in war, the pilot who dances just outside the rules is the one you never see coming. February 1943. Training skies. Eastern Algeria. The P-40 whined through the climb. Thin air, rising sun. Jimmy Hathaway's jaw clenched. His wingman was spiraling out of control. Stall! Stall! I'm dropping! Too close. Too fast. Jimmy yanked the stick, banked hard, then did it. Rolled under the stall. His own wing missed the others by inches. He pulled level behind the cloud line. Both planes alive. Silence. Back on the ground, his wingman was pale. You saved my life, but what? You shouldn't have pulled that roll. They'll ground you. And they tried. The debriefing room was quiet. Captain Mallory stared at Jimmy like he was a busted engine. That maneuver, we don't do that here. But it worked. It broke formation. If others follow, we lose control. You want that in combat? Jimmy didn't answer. Mallory leaned in. I'm grounding the roll. It's banned. Official. You use it again, even under fire. You'll wish the Germans got you instead. Later, Jimmy sat alone on an ammo crate, watching the sun fall behind the Algerian hills. His mechanic passed by, gave a low whistle. You're the one who danced through a stall today? Jimmy nodded. Mechanic smirked. Hell of a move. Looked like art. That night, Jimmy lay in his cot, eyes open, staring at the thin canvas above. If saving a man's life meant breaking the rules, what would it take to survive the real war? Because the sky didn't care about doctrine. And next time, he wouldn't either. April 8th, 1943. Early morning sortie, northwest of Kasserine Pass. The sky was too quiet. Jimmy flew lead in a 3-man flight. Lieutenant Marks off his right wing. Sergeant Dolan lagging just behind. A crackle on the radio. Eagle Nest, this is Vulture 2. Bogey sighted, grid Alpha 6. Request intercept. The voice was familiar, but something felt wrong. Did Vulture 2 even launch today? Marks asked. Dolan checked the call sheet. Negative. They're grounded for engine failure. Jimmy's eyes narrowed. Then who the hell just spoke? He pulled throttle. They climbed through a patch of thin cloud, and there it was. 3 Heinkels, V formation, flying low, bait. Below them, on the desert floor, flak batteries disguised as ruined trucks. Tracks dug into the sand. Camouflaged. It's a box, Dolan muttered. We're the bait. Jimmy's training kicked in. Climb out, regroup, wait for support. But every second brought them closer. The hinkles were aligned too perfectly. And then he saw it. A moment. An opening. The same figure-8 loop he sketched in Alabama. He'd be under them. Inside the turn, guns aimed straight into their bellies. If he did it. Marks shouted, "We pull up now or we die in this box." But Jimmy had already loosened his grip. The stick moved left. The sky twisted. He rolled. Somewhere a siren sounded. From the desert below, German gunners opened fire. But Jimmy wasn't there anymore. He'd vanished into instinct, because survival wasn't written in the manual. It was painted in smoke. And this sky was about to burn. The roll began at 20,000 feet. Wind crushed the fuselage. Every bolt screamed. The Warhawk tipped, flipped, belly to sky. Jimmy's vision blurred. Blood pushed back in his skull. He was under them now, under the 3 hinkles, upside down, sideways, spiraling. He squeezed the trigger. The first bomber bloomed fire. Engines tore loose. A wing folded like paper. The second, caught full burst, ignited mid-frame. Glass and aluminum rained like ash. The third, a moment's delay, took damage in the tail. It spun, coughed smoke, then vanished into cloud. 3 seconds, 3 kills. But Jimmy wasn't finished. His Warhawk bucked. Alarms howled. Hydraulics groaned as he fought the controls. Smoke curled from the dash. His dash. He leveled out low, just above the desert. Sand blurred below like rushing water. He was alive. But only just. Behind him, fire painted the clouds. Debris spiraled down like falling stars. Inside the cockpit, silence, broken only by his breath. Labored, shaky. He looked at his gloved hands, still clenched. They wouldn't stop shaking. "Jesus, Jimmy, you mad bastard!" Dolan's voice over the radio, cracking. Marks came through a second later. "You're not even supposed to be breathing." Jimmy said nothing. "Because, what do you say? After you've broken everything they taught you, saved your squad, disobeyed a direct order, and killed 3 men before breakfast." He glanced at the manual taped to the panel. The page on maneuvers still open. The Outlawed Roll crossed out in red ink. He laughed once, bitter, then turned for home. The airfield smelled like fuel and iron. Jimmy's wheels touched down with a hard skip, hydraulics leaking, flaps sticking. His P-40 limped into the hangar like a wounded animal. Dolan's plane landed behind him, waving wings in salute. The ground crew ran toward him, then stopped. They had heard. Captain Mallory stood on the tarmac, arms crossed. "3 bombers. Confirmed?" he asked. Jimmy nodded. Mallory didn't blink. "Congratulations. You just gave command a headache." In the debrief tent, the air was colder than the desert night. Jimmy tried to explain the roll, how it was instinct. The box, the kill zone, a second too slow, and they'd be dead. Mallory opened the logbook, drew a red line. "Your method isn't the issue," he said. "It's that you disobeyed standing order. You've created a precedent. We can't have chaos in the air." Dolan, normally loud and loyal, stayed silent. Even Marks kept his distance, eyes low. Jimmy waited for a nod, a word, something. But all he got was paperwork. His victory had no name, no medal, no citation, just a private warning in his file. Conduct bordered on insubordination. Resulted in high-value destruction. Recommends psychological evaluation if repeated. That night, in the mess, laughter echoed over trays and tin cups. None of it was for him. He sat alone, knife in hand, cutting bread he couldn't taste. He'd made the impossible move, and now no one wanted to follow. Not yet, because the first man through the wall always bleeds. South of Tunis, German forward listening post, April 9, 1943. A crackle on the wireless. Static, then a voice. Multiple aircraft destroyed. Unknown maneuver. Repeat, unknown. Eric Weiss adjusted the frequency, his headphones tight. The voice was frantic. German, one of theirs. He rolled inside us, under the formation, like a knife between ribs. Later that day, inside the field tent, the survivors from the Heinkel escort were debriefed. One, blood on his collar, burns on his neck, spoke through a trembling jaw. He didn't attack. He danced. The colonel frowned. What do you mean? He twisted under us. Not from behind, not above, from below. I saw his eyes, through the glass, upside down. Back in the airfield barracks, the story spread. They gave him a name, Der Spinner, the Spinner. Oberleutnant Kruger, who once lectured on formation discipline, stood silent at the chalkboard, staring at flight patterns that no longer made sense. He whispered, not to his men, but to himself. If they all start flying like that. He didn't finish. In the radio bunker, Weiss jotted the report in shorthand. He paused midway. New tactic, or one madman. He underlined the second phrase. Because something in the pilot's role, its elegance, its precision, didn't feel accidental. It felt practiced. And fear doesn't bloom from chaos. It blooms from method you don't understand. The Germans didn't just witness a maneuver, they witnessed a warning. April 1943. Field Barracks, Algeria. The war outside moved on. Sorties, briefings, missions. But Jimmy Hathaway stood still. Nights were the worst. He'd stare at the ceiling, canvas flapping in wind, and see the roll again, the twist, the trigger, the fire. He started writing letters home again. To his brother, he said, "The stars out here are sharp, not soft like Kansas." To his mother, still flying, still safe. But to his father, he hesitated, then scribbled, "I flew different this time. It worked, but they didn't like it. I don't know if I did the right thing." His wingman, Dolan, finally approached him one morning. Coffee in hand, quiet. "They're still talking about you, you know," Dolan said. Jimmy didn't look up. "Not in a good way." "Doesn't matter. Every guy in the barracks is practicing that role now, just slower." "Safer." Jimmy raised an eyebrow. "But they banned it." Dolan sipped. "Yeah, still banned, just not enforced anymore." Later, during maintenance, Jimmy found a junior pilot reading flight diagrams behind a fuel drum. "Don't show that to command," Jimmy said. The kid paled, then asked, "What did it feel like?" Jimmy stared past him, toward the runway. "Like I broke something, and it didn't fix when I landed." Because the cost of surviving isn't always visible. Sometimes it's written in silence. Sometimes in the way no one says your name when you enter the room. And sometimes it's the question that won't stop echoing. Was he wrong? Late April 1943. Over Bizerte, northern Tunisia. New squad, new mission, different airman in the lead. Second Lieutenant Harris. Young, eager, scared. Radio crackled. 6 bogeys, 5 o'clock. Closing fast. Flak burst below, machine guns above. Another flak trap. They were boxed in, same geometry, same death. Harris hesitated. Then he rolled, not sharp, not clean, but enough. Spun his P-40 under the center line. Pulled the trigger on the upswing, clipped 2 bombers. Disoriented the rest. His squad made it out. 3 days later, he limped back to base. Tail shredded, arm in a sling. When asked where he learned the move, he didn't answer. He just nodded toward Jimmy's tent. Command never mentioned it. The official report cited evasive improvisation. The manual, a quiet update. Page 47, subsection C. The spiral brake roll, only in extreme cases. No credit, no name. But the maneuver had a new label in the barracks. Hathaway's curve. Jimmy heard the whispers, saw the diagrams scrawled on crates. Pilots arguing over angles and timing. One even saluted him in passing. He didn't return it. He wasn't chasing medals. Not anymore. But something had changed. He wasn't a mistake. He was a marker. Not for rebellion, but for what's possible. When instinct defies fear. The role wasn't his anymore. It belonged to everyone willing to survive. Kansas, 1954. The air was clean. Corn rustled in waves again. Windmill creaked in rhythm. Jimmy Hathaway stood behind a battered hangar near Wichita, watching two boys taxi a beat-up trainer across the grass strip. One of them stalled the takeoff, flared too early. Jimmy didn't flinch. He walked out, calm. You felt that stall? The kid nodded, embarrassed. Jimmy knelt beside him, pulled a stick through the dirt. You were stiff, scared. You gotta let the plane move. Flow with it. He drew a loose figure eight, then a loop, then a roll. The boy stared. You're not supposed to do that, are you? Jimmy smiled. No, you're not. Inside the hangar, an old P-40 model sat above his desk. Dusty, cracked paint, propeller chipped. Underneath it, a single photo. 3 Heinkels, frozen mid-air, smoke trailing like black thread. No caption, no medals, just silence. Some nights, Jimmy still saw it. The moment the sky twisted. The second the world flipped. Not out of rage, not out of bravery, but clarity. That if he didn't do it, they'd all be dead. At the local fair, a reporter once asked if he'd ever flown in combat. Jimmy shrugged. Once or twice. Any advice for new pilots? He grinned. Trust the sky, but never trust the grid. The reporter looked confused. Jimmy just winked. Also, don't tell command. Because sometimes the rules save you, but sometimes breaking them does.